his analysis and bring in Ryan Lamond, Neo Vision Wealth Management co-founder and CEO. A pleasure to have you. Lovely to meet you in person. Let's talk a little bit about what Ben was just talking about, this divergence, this credibility or lack thereof. Do you believe Christine Lagarde and her peers?
Well, Christine Lagarde, not really. Things have not been very good with Mrs. Lagarde. We still remember the hump. When she made this move, well, it wasn't really a hump. It's omnipresent. Europe is in trouble today, and, well, good luck to Mrs. Lagarde. However, Mr. Powell, well, Santa Claus came early to town. For us, it's very, very dovish what he said. That's a clear and present pivot that Federal Chairman Powell has announced on Wednesday. And this pivot is what the markets are celebrating today, and rightfully so.
When we talk about this divergence, though, I will point out that you've left out Andrew Bailey, and perhaps by design. Let's talk then about whether or not Christine Lagarde and her ECB will then front-run Chair Powell and his Fed at some point, because it feels like that's what the markets are pricing in right now. Is that fair from a market perspective?
100%, because just to speak about Chairman Powell again, there's an election year. Okay.
There is.
That's reason number one. President Biden's poll results are not very good, and there needs to be some wins. Unfortunately for Powell, he couldn't celebrate mission accomplished, and this is what Christine Lagarde will try to do, to continue as is, because there's no election year in Europe, and she wants to continue and show that she is a good central banker and restore her credibility.
Well, we should point out, though, that the Federal Reserve, in all fairness, is independent from the White House and, of course, the political situation. But to your point about keeping the economy afloat going into an election year, well, a big part of that is going to be the commodity story, and that has been such a weight on the inflationary numbers in a way that services and wages have not. We had a guest on earlier from UBS saying, well, in 2024, we might see some sort of resurgence of commodity prices. Are you worried about an uptick in commodity-driven inflation?
We have not seen a single time in the history of the U.S. inflation figures just one cycle of inflation. It's often 3 cycles of inflation. This is just talking theoretically. So today we've had only one surge of inflation. So yes, there is a worry that we see a resurgence because maybe cuts are a bit early. It's not too sure yet, and during the press release done by Powell, there was not a single question about whether cuts are too early. So yes, an early cut could cause another resurgence in inflation. And yes, it is something we're factoring in, absolutely.
Well, I think one of the benefits of having you on the show this morning is that I think you have a longer-term perspective of it as a wealth manager yourself. So let's talk about some of the longer-term trends that a lot of economists have been pointing to as some sort of solution for some of the issues you're seeing in the market, noticeably the labor market in the U.S., but around the world as well. Larry Fink over at BlackRock has famously said that AI could be the solution to all of those problems, whereas the energy transition could be more of an inflationary story, AI a deflationary one. Do you believe any of that?
No, because I've lived the internet bubble, and back then we thought internet was going to transform the world.
And it didn't?
It didn't. It did not. It took a long time for it to do it. Remember Cisco back then? Cisco was NVIDIA.
Yeah.
Similar.
Fair.
It was selling routers. We thought that's it, Cisco is going to go to the moon. But no, these things take time. AI has not been incorporated in people's lives yet. Once it is incorporated into people's lives, then we can talk about transformation. Look at Adobe. Adobe announced, well, AI revenue is not really coming in. Stock tanked by 7%. It's way too early, yes. It's still ongoing. We believe in it, but it will take time.
Too early to be a deflationary element.
Yes, 100%.
So then, does it then factor as an inflationary element? And stick with me on my logic here. You're already seeing the labor market react to it. You are seeing strikes in Hollywood. You are seing strikes in the Detroit 3. You are seeing strikes in the UK in response to the AI story. Are you saying AI is inflationary?
I wouldn't say inflationary. I don't think it will have a serious impact on inflation, to be honest. Remember the calculator? When calculators were invented, you had teachers striking back then that, yeah, we shouldn't use calculators. So this is a natural thing when we have a transformational element coming into humanity. But will it really impact inflation? I doubt. It's still way too small to have such a macroeconomic impact today.
Well, let's talk about a more real-time macroeconomic impact then. We are sitting here in Dubai. We are a stone's throw away from the conflict between Israel and Hamas right now. there is a lot of conversation about how long that conflict is going to last. Initially, I thought the perception was a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months. Now it seems to be a consensus that it's somewhere from a couple of months to a couple of years. Putting some sort of war trade aside, how do you position, how do you hedge against that sort of geopolitical turmoil?
Well, we were very worried when this conflict started because this could have spread across the Middle East with multiple players around. However, it remained very much localized. So we were preparing to buy certain assets that protect us in these cases.
Like?
Gold, for example,
okay.
Fixed deposits on cash, etc. However, the conflict seems to be quite localized, and we're seeing that, well, some calls about Israel to restrain a little bit with the current military actions it's taking, and we've heard it yesterday in the US, where support is starting to wane a little bit, let's say. So we do expect this conflict to die down or become very small over an extended period of time.
Certainly something we're going to be watching very, very closely. We thank you so much for your insights this morning. That's Ryan Lamond, Neovision Wealth Management co-founder and CEO. We thank you as always. Still